think we're kind of past the point where we need cameras to get smaller. Tools are just getting smaller. Budgets are getting smaller. So as much as like us are going to say, we want S1H2 and an FX3 body, as much as we're going to bang on the table and say that, we're not the majority of people. Basically, Lumix take notes of all the other cameras that exist right now and then just copy them.
In this episode, we're going to be sitting down with Kofi to talk about what Lumix can learn from the new Canon C50, but also how the current cameras like the S1 Mark II, the S1R Mark II are also stacking up. So without further ado, Kofi.
What's going on?
Thanks for joining me on today's episode.
Oh, no problem, man. It's been a lot of shooting, so this is cool. This is like my 3-hour break between shoots, so it's kind of nice.
Dude, I feel that. I feel like the last few months have just been absolute crazy with camera launches, projects, and all of that in between. I'm looking forward to the holidays.
Yeah. I call it my cutoff is December 17th. After that, I'm going to just disappear for like a month or so.
That's how we all should do it. Anyways, yeah. I feel like most people know who you are, but I guess give a little bit of context of who are you, Kofi, kind of what you do and all of that, just for the few members listening to this podcast that don't know who you are.
Sure. So my name's Kofi Yeboah, not called Coffee. Most of my work from a production standpoint is in the fitness industry, working with different apps, supplement companies, a lot of pro athlete stuff, not live sports so much, but working with like the kind of the corporate and the ad side of things. I also do a lot of YouTube videos on a variety of different camera brands, which apparently now includes Canon.
I had this thought, like when I'm thinking of the Canon C50, I'm thinking of the S1 Mark II. I love to hear when you think cinema camera, because technically the Canon C50 is considered a cinema camera or part of the cinema line. When you think cinema camera versus hybrid mirrorless, what are the biggest differences that kind of come to your mind when you think of those two?
I think it's going to be body design, because like hybrid literally means that it's supposed to be the split between the middle, right? Like it does video well, but not super well that it takes over a cinema camera, but it also does photo well, but it also doesn't take over the photography side of things. And I think that's where like Lumix does really well, where they do kind of split it down the middle in a lot of ways, where it'll give you a lot in one area and give you a lot in another area. And if there was like photo and video on opposite sides, and the middle is like it does both of them equally as good or bad, I guess you want to call it. The S1R2 would be like the little Venn diagram meeting of like the photo and video, the photo in the middle, and then the S1 II is kind of like the little Venn diagram meeting of like the right of the middle and then video. And then where the C50 is, I think because tools are just getting smaller, budgets are getting smaller all over, like across the board. Like a lot of people are working less, or the budgets that they used to have aren't the same anymore, which also means the tool gets smaller. So what might have been a cinema camera in 2019 doesn't necessarily apply in 2025, 6 years later. So cinema camera per se is, can I do video exceptionally well beyond like that kind of middle point? And also, can I get really good audio at the same time and not have to get any extra stuff, or I could minimize how much extra stuff that I need to get?
Yeah, I actually kind of think about that like all the time when I'm thinking about like the Pixis 12K. Phenomenal camera, great at the price point, but because everything's in B-raw, it's like the storage size, I'm still waiting for the day when we can buy like 4 terabyte SSD that's extremely fast for like $100. Because it's like, these cameras are great, they're powerful, but like when the capabilities of them is not matching the budgets on the side for clients, where it's like, all right, is this worth having this one project be 4 terabytes and film and B-raw and everything? But
to be fair though, you could use a compression ratio on the Pixis 12K to get it to around the size of like something smaller if you wanted to. If you could shoot you can shoot in 4K and shoot it like I don't remember what the compression ratio is, but you could get it pretty low.
Right, you could do the 12:1 and have it be. It's still bigger than an H.265, but that's besides the point. C50, Lumix, I would love to hear then kind of your initial impressions of kind of the Lumix S1 Mark II style cameras versus the Canon C50. What do you love about the body designs between both the systems? What do you prefer on each one? And then specs and different things like that.
So I can comfortably say this, and this is mostly because I have gigantic mitts, and I have the C50 right here. The top handle's in my Pelican case in the car. This is ergonomically, I think, the best choice for a camera of this style. And like literally, I mean, this is gonna rile people up, but I also have an FX3 here. The grip is bigger. The top handle, I think, has the most amount of stuff that you would need out of a top handle. From an ergonomic standpoint, the C50 I think is like the better of all of the more video focused hybrid cameras. I have it right here, and I also have the FX3 here, and I have my S1 II somewhere around. But I love the grip on this guy, and the FX2 has like a deep grip like this for people with bigger hands. But obviously the sensor and all the other stuff, this one's going to be better. And then the FX3, it's still like it's hefty, but the grip is smaller. But in terms of the ergonomics, I'd say the C50, copying Sony's homework, it does a lot of things better. And I do think that the top handle is one of the big things in there. And I wish Lumix put everything in the S1 II in the C50 and everything in that XLR module for the 32-bit float in the same top handle as the C50.
That top
if you're
handle
gonna compare the two
is
again.
really, really nice, I would say. Like when you compare it to the FX3, where I feel like most people are always doing some type of add-on to have it be a complete top handle, I feel like the C50 got that top handle really, really well.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll let you continue on that train of thoughts.
Well, that was the thing. Like when I was doing, like I have the comparison video coming out, and when I was looking at the top handles, even when you buy the accessories to even get the form factor, you still don't get the toggle button for PZ lenses or the run stop button. You get the cold shoe mount, but then also the shock mount on the mic, the top handle is removable. So if I want to put a monitor on the top instead of the back of the handle, that's what that, like for me, that makes way more sense ergonomically than like putting a magic arm at the back and then sticking a monitor up, and then I completely block over the handle. So you could take that thing on and off and still use the 3.5 jack that's on it as well. I do think that if Lumix is to make a camera like kind of like the C50, if you want dual CF Express Type B, I think we're kind of past the point where we need cameras to get smaller. Like a video-centric camera, I'm okay with being larger, if that means that it's going to mitigate a lot of the problems that would stop it from being a more capable video camera, right? Like making the camera smaller to make it smaller, but it like maybe doesn't fit a bigger processor or built-in NDs, or it overheats, or it doesn't have the same heat sinks, or whatever the case is. Make it bigger then, and it's fine. I'll make, like most people I think are willing to make that adjustment, because most people with these video-centric cameras that have all of the internal codecs and raw footage and can shoot anamorphic, they're going to rig it up anyway. Like most people are like the argument around like, oh, well, what if I don't want to rig it? I'm like, based on the numbers that you see in people's rig build videos, like you're going to probably rig the camera up, to be honest with you. So if that means the camera's got to be a little bit bigger in order to do that, I think ergonomically the C50 is great. On
the C50, correct me if I'm wrong, can you hit record with the shutter button on that camera?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. I think the shutter button is the record button, really. Okay. There is no other.
On the FX3, you have to either program that, right?
Yeah, so like that's the button right here. Like that's just good. Like when I take photos, that's the button. When I record, that's the button too.
But then on the FX3, you have to program that because that's not the default setting. Yeah. Which that's a whole other topic, because that's like something every time I filmed for other people using the FX3 and I'm like only one hand, I'm like, I can't even press record without a second hand going up to go like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, why, you know?
Well, even more annoying than that, and I totally forgot this thing, is that when you turn on the HDMI control, like if I want to see all the control function on the monitor, you don't see it on the screen on the FX3 anymore. So I can't touch the track. Like I tried it yesterday, and I put on like the HDMI info. So like I was running my Axid monitor because I was going to do an autofocusing test, and I'm like, cool, let me tap on the screen so I can make sure that it's accurate. I plugged the HDMI in, and I put I did the whole thing where you could see the controls on the HDMI, and then the screen turned off. And I was like, well, I want that back. Like other cameras don't do that. So I'm like, well, now I feel like something was taken away from me. There might be a way to do it, and I think some monitors have camera control where you kind of do get both, but I think you need a separate cable. I can't remember, to be honest. But yeah, it was like little quirks where I'm like, I don't like that. That made me a little annoyed. Not the end of the world, but it's just small things.
Yeah, I think the S5 II and 2X, I plugged into a monitor the other day for a top-down angle, and I'm like, oh, my info display was off, and I forgot that was a thing on the S5 2X cameras for so long, since now the S1 Mark II cameras finally fixed that issue, even though it was originally like that, where you had info display on both your camera and your monitor. Whole other side topic on that. I still would love if I could see my big 6 on my camera and then see my info display with the normal information and the view on my monitor. So it's like having two different views. I think that would be super nice, because then on the Big 6 on your monitor, you can like quickly tap, change all your settings.
Yeah.
But then on your actual camera monitor, it still tells you all your info displays. I think something like that could be a potential really cool thing.
Which is the C50 doesn't have a Big 6. It has like a quick-ish menu, like you tap this little thing in the corner you tap, and like it kind of functions like the Big 6 where you like, tap it and you can control all the settings. But then I realized how annoying it is that there's two separate menus. Like there's one at the bottom where you can change all like your exposure settings. And then if you want to change like your shooting mode, you have to go to like another menu up there. And it's easy to read and it takes getting used to. But I'm like, I kind of miss just click one, click the other, then Bob's your uncle and you can do whatever you want.
So before I think diving into talking about what the Canon C50 does better than Lumix, and then we'll do the vice versa, I would love to just also touch point on the color science between both these cameras. Since the Lumix cameras with the S1 Mark II cameras, you have RE-Log C3, but you also have just normal V-Log. And then Canon, you have the C-Log 2 and C-Log 3, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you feel those color sciences compare with each one, and how do you feel about that?
So I'm gonna put on record here. I hate C-Log 3. I had cameras because C-Log 2 wasn't available for all the Canon cameras till recently. And coming from the R5, I had an R5, a C200, and a C70 way back in the day, and the R5 just wouldn't do C-Log 3, and it was really, really annoying. But the C-Log 2 looks really good. It's a ton of dynamic range that's in it. The colors shift a little bit magenta, but honestly, like even as I'm saying that, I'm like, you have DaVinci Resolve and you're shooting in 10-bit or RAW. You could just turn on your tint setting and you're good to go. I think they look very, very similar in a lot of ways, especially if you're gonna like match up the ProRes RAW to the Canon RAW. I just did that in a video a little while ago, and even like really basic grading, like a couple of adjustments for the exposure to make sure they're the same. They looked almost identical to each other. I will say though, is that it might be because of the lens I was using, because I was using the 24 to 72/8 on the C50. Trying to explain, the roll off between like your highlights and kind of getting into skin tones, even like as they get darker, is a little bit nicer on the Lumix, which I didn't necessarily expect, because just a couple of days ago I did a triple camera interview on a couple Canon cameras and everything looked really good. So like putting it beside like the S1 II, I was like, oh, it doesn't have that, like it's detailed, but it's not sharp, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And it might just be like my particular shooting situation, which might be it. But when I looked at it, I'm like, well, the Canon definitely has more resolution. They both have pretty equitable dynamic range, but just what I'm looking at, like when obviously you have your light off that's outside the camera, it's shining on your subject's face, and then it kind of trails off into being darker. The transition between those two things were a little bit nicer on the S1 II. But one thing I do like about the C50 is all of its open gate flavors. I think a lot of people kind of conflated the RAW with the 7K, that being the only option. But you could shoot not RAW 7K as well, and you could get that bit rate almost down to being just a bit over what Lumix offers. So like you can shoot like the RAW ST, the RAW LT, which is like 900 and 1500 megabits per second respectively. And then if you want to go into and I get this name wrong all the time, the XFAVC or the XFHEVCS. There's so many letters. But you can get that down from like as high as 1700, but you could get it all the way down to 420, just like the S1 II does. And it's like 360 megabits per second. And you could still shoot in 3x2 open gate at 7K. And I'm assuming the bit rate's only a little bit higher because the resolution's a bit higher, but that's more than manageable. And also the same compression method that you would have on the S1 II. So I think a lot of people got that confused, where they thought 7K means you could only shoot in RAW. Whereas no, it's open gate, you could only shoot at 7K, because open gate means you use the full sensor. And when you use a full sensor, you get the resolution with it. Like you can't shoot, unless you're using an Ursa Cine 12K or a Pixis 12K, getting 3x2 and a lower resolution at the same time doesn't happen, right? So that's kind of the cool part about it with the C50 is that you have so many flavors. I do wish though, in the menus, they were a bit more clear on what frame rate it was. Because I'll be looking, like someone was telling me today, because I couldn't find it, that you could still shoot 120 frames a second and record audio to a separate card. I can't, for the life of me, I can't find it. I tried every single mode. I've tried it 3 times. Can't find it.
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the menus then between those two cameras.
They're both, if it's your first time on either camera, they're both going to be overwhelming because there's so many options. But I will say I do like the fact, two things I like about the Lumix over the Canon is, one is if you mess up, like say for example a setting doesn't work properly, the camera will tell you. Like Lumix will be like, hey, you can't do this because of this.
Right.
Sony
Can't
does that
record
too.
to
Like
a
Sony,
CF
like,
Express Type P card or an SD or whatever.
yeah, it'll tell you. Where Canon, it's just grayed out and you have to like guess. It's like being in a toxic relationship where like you don't know why your partner's mad at you and you're like, why can't I use like I had to find out how to get like digital image stabilization working because it was just grayed out and I'm like, why isn't it working? I want it to work in OpenGate. Turns out it does, like the image stabilization in camera doesn't work when you're shooting an OpenGate. But I would have never known that unless there's no way of knowing that unless someone tells you or you experiment enough to figure it out. So Canon makes you kind of find the answer a bit more, where I find the other brands will just kind of be like, hey, you can't do this until you've changed that.
Yeah, I think one thing, like I made this a comment on like my initial impressions of these two cameras. One thing that I specifically like that Lumix does with their menu systems in the video sections, it tells you, even though it's one ginormous 19 pages of MOV settings and then you have ProRes settings, it tells you every single setting each video thing does. It's not like like you said, it's not like the XCHS whatever V letters. It's just like, oh, this is 422, 10-bit, and all intra. Here's your resolution. And it's not saying like, oh, your resolution is 5936 by whatever. It's just saying, hey, this is 6K 3x2. And then it says the resolution underneath it, which I personally find so much easier than instead of guessing like, oh, what's this resolution? Is this the resolution that's a 17:9 format or 3x2 format or different things like that on some other camera brands? But the way I've always described the menu systems for Lumix for people who are kind of getting into it is your video or photo page is to kind of turn on all your camera stuff, turn on your autofocus, turn on your video settings, turn on what colors. The second page, which is called the custom page, is to customize everything just a tad bit more, customize what you want to see, what you want to hide, how you want certain things to be controlled. And then the last two pages really, or last three, but the last two pages is like the basic default settings, how your cards are reading, formatting, power save modes, the basic dumb settings.
That fan setting.
The fan settings. Yes,
setting.
Exactly. The fan settings. And then you have the My Menu setting, which figure out what settings you want to use and set up that. The greatest part too is, the My Record quality list. You can pick whatever you want, hit Q, and then have it be that. And then you can have multiple My Record quality lists if you set them up in custom modes, which is a whole other video on my channel if you're interested in watching that. But to kind of dive into it, what are things, I think since we've been talking about the Canon C50, what are things you like about that Lumix are doing maybe on the S1 Mark II that are doing better than the C50 right now? Then we'll jump back to the C50.
I think Lumix is really honed down on having the video features that I think help the most amount of people. Right, even if you equate for OpenGate, the C50 doesn't do it in slow motion. It does it in up to 30 frames a second. Do I use 30 frames a second? Absolutely not. I've used it maybe once in my life. So in my mind, it's 24 frames a second. Being able to do things like get audio when you're shooting in 4K 120 frames a second is huge for sports shooters, which is something that like I ignored a little bit. And like someone's like, oh, I want 4K 120 in sound. And I'm like, why? And it made sense in like a sports application. So if you need it, you have it kind of thing. I do like that, like it's OpenGate also can do slow motion. All of the image stabilization things, which I think is a big one, where I can understand the reason why Canon does that. And I actually literally put both the C50 and FX3 on a mechanical robot arm and did repeatable shots and then masked the shots over top of each other to show the difference of what a sensor with IBIS does versus one that doesn't. And the reason for that, like not having IBIS inside of a camera makes sense in some ways it doesn't. So there's stuff like that where like that's going to be a point of contention for some people, because some people, firstly for me, if I'm going to shoot handheld, which I do a lot, IBIS makes a lot of sense. If you're someone that's shooting on FPV drones, robot arms, certain gimbals, depending on your setup and stuff like that, car rigging and all the other, that's where the C50 makes a lot of sense for those people. So it's more divisive than it is anything else. And it depends on what you want, right? But also the lenses have the IS in it, which is fine if they make more lenses and all of them have IS instead of just a couple of them. And that's where Lumix doesn't necessarily bar that from you, right? I mean, I think the only thing in terms of its stabilization that it might be a little iffy on is that cropless stabilization has to be a Lumix lens.
Right.
But that's purely because Lumix has their own lens data, and if another party's not going to give it to them, then they can't make it cropless, right? Those are some of the things I think Lumix does a lot better. And also just like the menus from using both of them, and I've used menus on like every camera brand now. Lumix 1000, like it's a lot, there's a lot there, but it handholds you through that process. So like even trying to find like your shooting modes, it'll be like, hey, do you want, like if I say I only want to shoot in 4K, I could set my menu up where it only shows me 4K modes, and I could just change it from there. Right. Also, I totally gapped on this, and I haven't mentioned it for photography. The S12 has a mechanical shutter. The C50 doesn't. And I tried taking some like higher speed photos with a High Rocks athlete on like those sprinting treadmills. Not one thing was in focus. Not one. It was blurry. It like everything was kind of like diagonal. It was weird. It was funny. I tried it and it didn't look as good as like using something like a mechanical shutter, I think. And I think that's going to be the difference, right? Like if you're someone who shoots sports, having things like mechanical shutter, I from what I hear, makes a lot more sense. If you use things like strobes and stuff like that, like having a mechanical shutter makes a lot more sense. So the S12 does hybrid really, really well. Is I guess is the overarching theme, I guess, for that.
I feel like Lumix has kind of carved this niche where they specifically are for content creators, but also kind of like the run and gun filmmakers or working filmmakers, people who aren't necessarily on robot arms or FPV drones or different things like that. Because I feel like if you're rigging up a camera to a robot arm or an FPV drone, the likelihood is that you are actually going to probably be getting some higher end cinema camera. Maybe the C50 makes sense in that. And it is funny that you mentioned the mechanical shutter, because I did not know about that, especially because so many people said to Lumix saying, we want to be, when we turn off our camera, to have our shutter be closed, so when we're swapping out lenses, and that's something that Canon did. So it's really funny that they don't have that as a feature.
I'll show you. Hang on a second. It really surprised me the first time I saw it, because I had i7R5, but like if you look at this, hang on a second. Let me see if I can focus on this. There we go. So watch. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So, but on the R5, it does it just fine.
Right. And I think something else, I'm pretty positive that the C50, you can't record to an SSD either. Is that correct?
I haven't tried. I haven't tried, but do I have if I have an SSD? Oh, actually, you know what? Yeah, I could probably find that out right now.
Yeah, you find that out, because I'm pretty positive.
I don't think you can.
And it could be wrong, but yeah, I'm pretty positive you can't record to an SSD on the Canon C50, which I think is just like something, especially with CF Express Type B cards warming up cameras or different things like that. I feel like recording to an SSD is like such a really nice workflow. I don't even know if that's possible on the FX3. I didn't look that up, but I think that's like something that people like sort of undermine, that Lumix, you can record to an SSD, and it could be easier for workflow or having a DIT on set. So I kind of
which was so one you can't do it. It doesn't even give you like the option, like when you change, like when you want to choose your record mode, it's CF Express or SD card. The FX3 technically can record to an SSD. I haven't tried it with like a Samsung T7, but if you have a Ninja 5, you can record through the SSD through the monitor. And you can get ProRes RAW if you want to do it now, which is more valuable now, saying that, because now you could use it on Resolve. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, you're good. I mean, at that point, you're also just get a Lumix so you can record ProRes RAW internally too. It is also, that's a whole nother side note, how funny how Lumix has kind of cannibalized Atomos monitors for Lumix cameras. Like camera to cloud with proxies, frame.io, and Apple
just
ProRes
make a
RAW.
time code generator and call it a day, and then just say that, and like it's like slowly being like, we don't need you, we don't need you, we don't need you. The only thing we have left is like the Bluetooth time code gen.
Bluetooth time code, and then if they got B-RAW somehow internally, that would go like the we're good by ourselves. But give now kind of flipping the coin here. What is something that Canon C50 is doing better than Lumix in this aspect?
Ergonomics, man. And also, I think one of the things that, and I think a lot of people said this, is that we're all kind of tired of hybrid cameras now. Like they exist, we're good. Like, and if they are going to be hybrid cameras, like maybe let's come out with those second. And the hard part about that, and I can understand from a business aspect, is like hybrid cameras have the largest audience. So as much as like us are going to say, we want the S1H2 and an FX3 body, as much as we're going to bang on the table and say that, we're not the majority of people. We're just really, really loud. right? So it's easy to kind of conflate those two things and be like, this is what the people want. It's like, is it though? So they come out with the hybrid cameras first. That way they could have the capital to make the other stuff, which I think is fine. But I do like the fact that Canon just committed to making a camera like that. And what they did, they literally, it looks like it, but they did literally take the FX3, stare at it for 3 years and say, how do we make every part of this a better experience? And in a lot of ways, they achieved that. From an ergonomic standpoint too, because I mean, we're getting to a place in like everything looks really, really good, and it's going to come down to workflow. And if part of that workflow is the ergonomics, and if you nail the ergonomics and you just put exactly the same stuff, because this is what we're asking for, right? Like we're asking for a Lumix camera and an FX3 body, which means that we don't necessarily have a problem with a lot of the sensor stuff. We just want it in a body that had like the handles our workflow better. Because Canon is doing that, I think is what they're doing a little bit better than the S1 II. And that's the reason why a lot of people, like even myself, like I texted Sean right away when I have the C50 and I'm like, put this in here. I don't know what you have to do, but just take everything out of the S1 II and stuff it in a C50 and change the OS. Leave the OS the same if it's cheaper. I don't care. But like we want to see that, right? So I think that's something where they are doing really, really
and
well.
And make sure it doesn't overheat too.
I mean, these fans are, I tried my best. I did the whole put it in direct sunlight and let it cook for whatever. However, I just got bored and stopped. And charging the battery takes a long time on the C50. So I'm like, after the third test, I'm like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done here. You guys win. But yeah, I think ergonomically, I think that's going to be a big thing for Canon. I think most of us aren't a fan of closed mounts, to be honest with you. But outside of that, man, like they did everything really, and also just options. Like Lumix has a lot of options in terms of shooting modes, but I feel like their open gate options maybe have like 5 or 6. Everything else has like 20 or 30. So where the C50, like your sensor crop has a bunch of different modes. Maybe I don't need 15 different bit rates for each one. Like maybe I'm cool with like one of them. Like if I'm going to shoot in XFAVCS 10-bit 422, like 1 or 2 bit rates. Like it doesn't need to be like 1700, 1000, and 300 or whatever. Like give me like 1 or 2 and it's fine. And I could choose between all intra and long op. And even then I'm like, I could probably go years using the C50 and not use 12 of the codecs that are on here.
But I think could also be cool that Canon did the new feature with multi-recording, which ironically, I believe you only can do that on a 16:9 aspect ratio, not even in the open gate, which would have made a lot more sense. So it would be cool if Lumix took that feature, but specifically for open gate, and then using multiple frame markers where you can decide where your frame is recording, and then having like 3 video clips, 1 full open gate, and then 2 in frame markers. I think that could be like really, really practical. Now, as we're slowly kind of laying this plane, I have a couple more last questions for you. Do you think Lumix should try to make an C50 or an FX3 competitor, or do you think it would make more sense to make like a Pixis 12K or FX6 competitor style body?
Second one.
Second one?
I think, yeah, because I think what's happening now is people that already have the S1 II, people that have the S1 II that don't have a problem with overheating, are looking for that next camera to be, I guess, what would make the S1 II a B camera. And also getting a bigger body, which would mitigate the one problem everybody has, which is overheating. That would solve a lot of problems. It would also give people that are in those workflows that use FX6s like, hey, oh, that does exist. Okay. Like I think where the C80 kind of misses is its form factor, and it kind of looks like a 1DX. So people that are used to like an FX6 style body or a Pixis 12K body or kind of like a Komodo X, they're looking at the C50 and they're like almost in a little way, they're like, oh, that's still kind of a mirrorless camera or not. For some people, at least like like I had a C70 and that was kind of the reception, was it still kind of felt like I was just using a 1DX with extra steps. But like with Lumix making something like that, I think that puts him in his place where there's a realistic conversation around like, oh, this is a legitimate competitor in that sub $10,000 cinema camera market. It has a lot of great things going for it. And where you start to see some of these run and gun jobs, like if you're covering events or if you're doing corporate work, or like a lot of my work is direct to client. I don't work with an agency for production purposes, where industry standard doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't matter if I use a Lumix or a Blackmagic or a Sony in a lot of cases. That would be where that would fit really, really well. And I think people are looking for that. I'd love to have built-in NDs and IBIS, but I think with that's going to cause a little bit of an identity crisis with Lumix because you have to pick between IBIS and built-in NDs, or you make a $25,000 Sony Burano, which most people have their own separate issues with the Sony Burano, realistically. So you got to kind of pick between the two, and I don't know if there's a way to do that in an effective way, but I think an FX6 style body with all the Lumix stuff in it, but also, and I just thought about this, with a bigger camera, you could also put bigger processing power in it. Is there more that we can get out of that sensor with a bigger camera? Like, we don't know. We have no idea. Only that's between Lumix, the engineers, and the Lord. So
right. Yeah, because we could potentially get like 6K open gate, but 422, 10-bit, or maybe even 12-bit H.265.
It could be 444. We wouldn't know.
Right. That too. Yeah, that's endless possibilities.
I think if they can do that, dual CF Type B reader, SSD compatible, like you could record an SSD to it right away. In fact, I was gonna do this, but I feel like I'm gonna do this slowly because it feels less of a flex doing it. Like if you have the Pixis 12K with like you have the Lumix camera and you had like this little thing on the side and you just put the little SSD in there, I think that would help out a lot as well. Basically, Lumix take notes of all the other cameras that exist right now and then just copy them.
Yeah.
And then add your own, but add your own things that make the brand unique, and I think it'll do well.
Right. I feel like if Lumix finishes out like sort of that ecosystem of like where you can upgrade or the upgrade path, you know, you have your S9, you have your S5 II, the 2X camera, then you have the S1 IIe, S1 Mark II cameras, and then you go for like that FX6 style or Pixis 12K camera. And then if eventually they could always fill in those gaps with some type of FX3 style version of it, you know, later down the road, once they already have like the top dog 8 camera, then they could figure out, okay, now let's just take the S1 II and let's just throw it into a cinema body and make people happy about that too. But I feel like making the higher end video workforce camera and with the S1 II still being like a great sort of B cam for that still would like make a lot of people happy, but then it's also again making that workflow kind of go up in the process. So yeah, well, cool, Kofi. I have one more question for you, but before we dive into that, where can people check you out here?
Well, now that we have YouTube collab posts, you can just kind of click on the subscribe button. You can find me now. Instagram is I am Kofi Boa. If you find me on TikTok, I don't post on there, but you'll see it eventually. But this month is going to be very heavy YouTube, as this is the most I've ever uploaded, I think, ever in a single month. And it's a lot. So you'll probably see them on your home feed.
Sweet. Well, sweet, Kofi. If you can choose, my last final question, if you could choose between one of these two cameras, the Canon C50, or we'll just say the Lumix S1 Mark II, which would you choose and why?
This is the hardest question because I'm always going to say this, and it really gets on people's nerves. It depends. And it depends on what I'm shooting. Now, if I'm doing the jobs that I'm currently doing, I would more than likely pick the S1 II. Mostly because like a lot of the fitness work and stuff that I do, like having 6K open gate that could do slow motion, like that's advantageous. And I charge for multi aspect ratio deliverables. So open gate does make a lot of money. And then just having more options on that on the S1 II than the C50. But then at the same time, I like the C50 looks really good and it does a lot of things really well. So if I had to pick today for the jobs that I have this week, I would bring the S1 II with me. But I think for a lot of people, especially if you already have a Canon camera, the C50 is going to be great.
Right. I feel like no matter what choice you make, every camera right now that's coming out is like phenomenal on what it does and what it's meant for. And I feel like if you haven't shot on open gate, Sony users, you don't understand how good open gate really is and how effective it is for workflows. So
I'll give two business things, because I think some of the points of contention people have with the C50 and the S1 II are things that you could solve like with business. And I'm sure you know this as well. For one, if you're shooting an open gate for multi-deliverable, so say you have to deliver a 16:9, a 9:16. If you work with anybody that does Facebook ads, sometimes you have to do 1:1 or 4:5. Charge for the revision. Like that, like I've been doing that for when I get one of my first open gate cameras like 2 years ago. I've been charging for the revisions, and my editor's just been making like hundreds or thousands of dollars just by revising it and then making it for a different format and making a different edit, but he had all the information to work with. So if you're someone who's editing, someone who's taking care of posts, and you have to do a bunch of deliverables, like that is a thing that can make you more money and make the process of making more money easier. Can you do it on 16:9? Absolutely, especially if it's high res. But if like all of the cameras that do open gate are cheaper than its competitors that don't. The Pixis 12K is cheaper than the FX6. The S12 is cheaper than an FX3. The C50 is cheaper than an FX3. The Fuji XH2S, I think, is the only situation on a Super 35 camera that's a little bit more expensive than like an FX3. The Ursa is cheaper than the FX9. The Ursa is cheaper than the Red Raptor. And in almost every situation when you compete them together, and also in the open gate cameras, you can still shoot 16:9, 4K, whatever you want. Like you can still do them, and arguably at the same bit rates as the thing it's competing against. So it's not meant to be a subtraction. It's meant to be an addition. If you want to shoot 16:9 or 17:9, all of these cameras can do it, no problem. So I think reframing the whole like open gate thing is, yes, you can do that in 16:9, but you can also get the extra information. And if you're someone who charges for the deliverable revisions you have, it also makes you more money at a lower cost point than buying something else. The second thing was going to be some of the bit rates and shooting in RAW and stuff like that, because even that conversation happens with the ZR. If you're working on client work, and this is just like a regular business thing, the price to get the drive should be reflected in the price you charge your clients. Like tariffs, for example. Company gets tariffed, they don't take the tariff price, they pass it back on to us. That's why the FX3 is the price that it is now. And in a objectively business way, if your cost of production for these projects go up, then so should what you're charging your client, which should justify or be the space where you just buy extra hard drives. Is it inconvenient to have extra hard drives and NAS drives? Yes. But then that's kind of that same argument was made when all intra recording came out versus whatever the A7 III had when it was 8-bit. Those file sizes were bigger than the other. In fact, the 240 megabytes or megabits per second on the FX3 was like 2.5 times more than the A7 III when everyone was using that for video. So it's just the conversation happening over again, where the concession is you buy bigger hard drives, and if you're using this for client work, which I hope if you're spending the money, you're getting paid some money from it, you buy the hard drives, and then it's a business expense, which it's kind of like everything else. So.
And I think one note I want to add on to that, which I think specifically for Sony users who are like, oh, Lumix cameras are in OpenGate is not shooting in a 422 10-bit option, it's 420. I've pushed Lumix 422 versus 420 on 10-bit extreme. I've done color grading I've done green screen work with them, and it's hard to know it's a difference on Lumix cameras. Maybe on other cameras that's an issue, but it's really hard.
Well, here's the cool part about that. Now that DaVinci Resolve takes ProRes RAW, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can just shoot the RAW then, and then make it 444 and do whatever you want with it if that's what you want. But even at that, most people, like if you've seen any video on the S12 or the S1R2 shooting an open gate, and during that time you never thought, hey, that looks like 422 or 420, most people aren't going to notice. And at that point, if they do, at the price tag that it is, buy more expensive. Like those people know who they are already, kind of thing. And I would challenge most people to show me, like in their own work, if 422 has messed them up at all. And I don't know if that's happened as often as I think people are making it out to be.
Yeah. Well, sweet, Kofi. Thanks for joining me for this episode.
Oh, no problem, man.
If you guys are interested in checking out another episode talking about the future potential cinema camera from Lumix, check out that video right there. YouTube recommends you might like this video right here. Until next one, guys. Peace.